Good morning, everyone. It is July 1st, and weather report, it's hot here in the desert. I think it's going to hit 96 today, but by Saturday, it's going to be 110. So, here's up, as always. Anyhow, I thought before I get into reading the journal, I wanted to talk a little bit about how to maybe not access your memories, but free up the space in your mind so that you can access them, and if you're in a place where you already have access them so that you can hear them more clearly. I don't, when I'm driving in my car, I don't have any radio on, any sound. I like to think while I'm driving. And also when I'm at home during the day, I don't have the TV on in the background while I'm cleaning house or cooking or whatever. As I'm sure you're all familiar, when you have the television on or the radio on, and then when you have it off later, say you're at work or whatever, you have that stuff going through your mind, like a commercial, the jingle from a commercial, or what my sister would call an earworm. She heard a commercial from the lawyer one time, and it had this jingle, and it ran through her head for days and days and days and days. Now, my sister always has the radio on in her car, and always has something going on in her house, but I don't. What you'll discover... Oh, let me back up a little bit. If you have the TV on all day and you're watching regular TV with commercial breaks, it's the commercial breaks that are really going to get you, and the music and jingles from your shows. Now, I found when I stopped watching regular television, I'll watch YouTube, and occasionally I'll watch like one show that when I need something brain dead, I'll watch it. But it will take a couple of weeks for that stuff to stop running through your mind. It's occupying your mind space. And for example, if you're watching soap operas, if you're watching any serial TV show or a movie, your mind will be maybe not preoccupied with it, but you were thinking, oh, I wonder what's going to happen today, if it's a soap. I remember my mom and I watched General Hospital together as kids, and, the whole Luke, Laura saga, the whole deal. But even up until I met my husband about 20 years ago, I was watching General Hospital. It occupies your mind, your thinking. It fills up that space, and that's what it's designed to do. You may not understand it, and just think about this. They call it programming, your television programming. Well, it's programming you. Outside of the content that's in it, which in soap operas, you'll know that they always have a storyline that's of something contemporary for the times. I remember 20 years ago, Alan on General Hospital had an opioid addiction, and that was before it was even discussed in mainstream. So they are programming you, preparing you for what's going on in society, and they're giving you the solution for what they think you should do about it. It's their idea, their program. They're programming you through your shows. If you watch these comedies or any regular television show, they always got something that's contemporary to our times, and even something that's coming up in the future, and that's called predictive programming. They know that it's coming up in the future. They're going to feed that data into the news outlets when it's the right time to do so, so that you're prepared and ready and you know how to respond because you saw so-and-so on this television show respond that way, and it turned out all right on the TV. So without getting too deeply into that, I'm just saying try to turn it off, or turn it off entirely. Especially if you don't work and you're at home and you're trying to fill your time, try to just be in silence. Don't sit in front of the tube all day. those jingles are going to go through your head. And I know that all of you know this. I mean, I watched something with my husband the other day, and there was a jingle, and it took a whole day. It occupied my brain for a whole day. You know, not consistently all day long, but it ran through my head. And that's what it's designed to do. And all of us hate it. I know that you do. It's annoying. Why am I thinking about that? Well, commercials run over and over and over for that very reason, to fill up your headspace. Now, if you're listening to music, the same thing's going to happen. You're going to, you know, if you don't have music going, or if you have music going all day, it's filling up your headspace. And your parts, or your regular consciousness, doesn't have time to slide anything in edgewise because it's full. So I'm going to recommend you turn off the TV and turn off the radio while you're driving or while you're at home. And I know it's going to be challenging. And wean yourself off. If you've got 5 or 8 or 10 shows that you watch, cut a couple of them out, because I don't know about you, but I know that half the time back 20 years ago when I watched TV a lot, you're like, oh, okay, I'll put this on just, to not let the next half hour go by, or the next hour go by, or, oh, but it's just so exciting or interesting or whatever. If you have to have something on, put on something educational, something YouTube, or like when I ride my bike, which I can't ride outside anymore because I developed allergies from it. So I have a trainer indoors, and I ride my bike indoors now. I put on something educational, and before I got into all of this, I found a channel called The Great Courses. And it was $20 a month, and I thought, well, since I'm not paying for, HBO, let me pop this on. And I watched it for about 6 or 9 months. I learned about different languages, about Indian culture, various different things. So when I'm riding my bike, I'll watch something educational. Now it's YouTube and SRA stuff and, all of that, or a channel called Dr. Romney about narcissism and psychotic people. So try to educate yourself, and as you're educating yourself, your parts inside are going to listen as well. Some of them or all of them. And they're going to start getting information rather than crap, because television's crap. It really is. It fills up your headspace. So it'll probably take a week or 2, and you're still going to have those thoughts running through your mind, and you're still going to be thinking about it. And it's like, withdrawing from a drug in a way, because television is set at a certain cycles per minute that resonates with the brain. And it's also proven that it activates the part of the mind that, I forget if it's alpha or beta or whatever, but it's a part of the mind that's hypnotic. So scientifically, it puts you in a hypnotic state, which I think is the alpha state. I could be wrong about that. So you're in a hypnotic state. You got all this crap going on. It's designed to engage your emotions, get you interested, get you to identify with the characters, 1 or 2 or all. And if you have parts inside of you, the different parts inside of you are going to identify with the different parts in the movie. And whatever's going on there, I don't know about you, but I cannot watch horror movies. Can't. Won't. They freak me out too much. They make me very nervous. And if I'm watching a suspense film where something surprising happens, I jump. My husband always looks at me like, what? You can't believe I jumped. Well, now I understand why I do. Because the parts inside of me are watching it, and they're getting triggered with their trauma again. So television and movies are going to trigger you, and particularly the news. I don't watch the news anymore. Since COVID, and we all know that we were lied to, and if you don't know, you should by now. If they're going to lie on a massive scale like that, worldwide, on every channel, then what makes you think that they're telling you the truth about anything? Look up crisis actors. Whenever there's a school shooting or some major event that's traumatic for that particular area, they hire people to act. And that's who they interview, are crisis actors. All of it. All of it. It's scripted. I even found out, the little banter between the anchors on the show, between storylines, and say, oh, I thought about this and that and this and that, whatever. Their little banter back and forth, even that is scripted, because parts of you or your conscious mind is going to identify with them, and they're going to give you how they think you should respond. Is it, oh my God, is it concerning? Is it funny? Is it irrelevant? It is programming you. Turn it off. Open up a book. Put a puzzle together. Play with your children. Start a garden. Fill your time with activities that have silence. And you're going to start to hear your own mind. Even if it's just your conscious mind, but at a certain point your parts are going to chit-chat to you. And you'll have conversations in your head. And you may not understand that they're parts or whatever, but at least you're hearing your own thoughts. And your headspace isn't filled up with junk. So I'll get off this rant, but turn off the TV, turn off the radio. You don't have to have all that sound and visual imagery constantly present. Get to know your own mind and your own self, and you'll discover you'll be more peaceful just regardless. I mean, think about the news or anything that's coming on. How relevant is it to you? Can you do anything about it? Outside of the feel-good stories, where, oh, that's nice, isn't that sweet? They pop that in there. Well, they do that to take the edge off of all the other crap that's mostly lies anyway, that are there to keep you in a state of anxiety or uncertainty, or the world is scary and awful. It's teaching you to be helpless because you can't do anything about it. They're going to tell you that you can. They're going to tell you that you can vote and make a difference. Well, we all know that the Electoral College is what puts a president in office. Our votes are irrelevant. So even to get sucked into that, it's a game, it's a show, it's the political campaign, elect a president show, and all the actors and actresses are going to encourage you to vote. It doesn't matter. The powers that be at the highest levels control all of it. They know who they want to put in and when they want to put them in. And they put on a show to get you emotionally engaged. For those of you who watched the debate the other day, my husband did, and I thought, let me watch it and kind of study it and see what's going on. And there was many takeaways I took from it. Things that they don't discuss is what's of interest to me. They talked about, the border and all the people flooding across the border and the children and how Trump locked them up, but Biden is allowing them to be trafficked, whatever. Not one of them got into the fact that where are they? What are they going to do? How are they going to address that? They both brushed by it and hit the key points that they knew that people, yeah. It's designed to emotionally engage you so that once it's off, you and your husband can argue, or you and your sister, you and your mom, you and your neighbor. It's about distracting you and dividing us. So I'm sorry, I went into a rant about that. So turn it off. It's teaching you to be helpless. It's teaching you to be emotionally engaged in what they want you to be emotionally engaged in. And the movies and TV shows are telling you how to react when it happens in the real world. It's programming you. Your television programs are programming you. So turn it off. Wean yourself off. If you're watching 10 different shows in a week, cut one out per week. Cut half out per week. back when I was watching my soap operas and I first met my husband, I used to get so frustrated because he would come home and want to talk about work, and that was, when my soap was on. General Hospital, I gotta see what happens. And finally it got to the point where I asked myself, what's more important to me? This fictional soap opera or my husband? And I chose my husband, and I stopped watching it. And yeah, when I talked to my mom, we didn't have that thing in common anymore. But you know what? She was able to fill me in on everything that was going on. So, after a year or so, that kind of even stopped too. But please, 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 I beg you, stop letting them fill your mind. Start to empty it out of all the foreign, external nonsense, programming, divide and conquer, all that stuff. Turn it off. Learn to be comfortable in your silence. And if you can't get to that silence, it's because you got people talking to you from the inside and they want to hear. And if you don't listen to them, then they're just going to say, well, screw you. You don't give a damn what I have to say. You don't care what my opinion is. So they're not going to trust you with the deeper, harder stuff. That is where the real healing begins. So first of all, they want to know that you're listening. And secondly, that what they say is real for them. And don't brush it off. Grab your journal and record it. Even if it sounds like gibberish to you, just write it down. You don't have to know who it is or what it's about. Just, I keep having this, say it's been 3 months and you haven't listened to the radio or TV and you're comfortable with the silence. And for me, I'll have a song run through my head and say, why is that there? I haven't heard the radio. I haven't heard it in years. Why is that there? And I'll jot it down. And I'll go out and work on TED, which I need to do a video. You can watch me do that. But I'll listen to that song while I'm beating on TED, and then all of a sudden, oh, I had a trauma, and that song was playing in the background, or it was intentionally being played because of the lyrics. My perpetrator wanted to instill those lyrics into that part, etc. So quiet your mind of the external crap so that you can hear what's going on in there, and your parts know that you're hearing, and that you're willing to take a minute and jot it down. And if you're not jotting it down on paper, get your phone, use the notes application, pop on the microphone and just dictate it. How much time does that take? 10 seconds, 15 seconds? See, I keep having this stupid song go through my head. I don't understand it. I'm feeling a little this or that, and I just wanted to make note of it, and set it back down. And maybe at the end of the week, you'll read all that, or at the end of the day or whatever. But for me, when I do that, once I write it down and jot it down, and then maybe an hour or two later while I'm cleaning house, I'll have a song pop in my head, go through my mind. I'm like, what is that from? Why is that there? And I'll jot it down into my notes. And then after I'm done cleaning, a couple hours goes by, and I go, oh my God, that's my part. And so not only will I hear the music, but I'll start to see images. And I'll go, oh, and then maybe the next day, the song and the images, and then my part will say, well, this is what happened. And they'll give you the surface level thing. And so I'll dictate that into my notes. And each day they'll give you a little more. And yeah, it's stressful. You'll have adrenaline come up, but that's what TED is for. You beat the adrenaline out, your part feels satisfied, and once they feel, not 100%, maybe that day they're only giving you 10% of their frustration, but you beat out that 10%. And so now they're like, oh, okay, I'll give you a little bit deeper stuff. So the next day you beat on 10 again, and maybe they gave you 20% more. Or maybe you lay down to go to sleep and they're going to give you 80% all at once. That happens to me a lot. But you've got to dictate it and record it or write it down. I'm at the point now where my memories are coming so fast and furious, my handwriting can't keep up. I have to dictate it into my phone, and then each day I'll sit down and I'll send it to my email, copy it from my email, put it in a Word document. I'll add. It's a whole process, because once I dictate it, the dictating isn't correct 100%. The punctuation or whatever might not be right, but I'll read through it and correct words that were put in there wrong. Okay. And I try to do that immediately, because 2 days later you might not remember the phrase that you were given. So I'll dictate it, and then I'll sit down and go back and correct it, as much as possible, and then I'll set it down, and then the next day I'll send it to my email, copy it from there, paste it into a Word document. When I'm in there, I'll reread it again and edit it again, and that's when I'll get more details. Actually, sometimes when I'm correcting the dictation, the part was, oh yeah, let me add that in there. And remember, oh yeah, let me add that on that paragraph. So they'll give you more details as you're going through it the second. So you dictate it, you go through it the second time, put it in your email, post it in a Word document. Now you're editing it in your Word document, and I'll get more details. Oh my goodness, I didn't understand how that and that were connected, but now, okay, so I can insert that into that, and it'll be a little more chronological. And if it doesn't come chronologically, I'll just put the pieces in there disjointed. And then as I'm doing that, I'll go, oh, I realize that's one part that's talking about such and such. And, oh, this is a different part. And so I'll jot their name down and highlight it so I know what part that is. So that's a third time through. So you dictate it, your second time. And you get more details the third time. And you can highlight or italicize or bold things. And generally, as I'm dictating, I might hear a phrase come into my mind that one of my perpetrators said. And I didn't quite get the intensity or the intonation of it, but when I'm going through a second or third edit of it, I go, oh my God, they weren't just saying it, they were screaming it, or they were whispering it, or they were hissing it. And so I can, change the font to kind of indicate the emotional, delivery of it. And then I take it from there. I put that into a PowerPoint. My PowerPoint has the actual individual parts separated, and I'll put the date, and I'll copy and paste that particular part's entry in there. So I've gone through it 4 or 5 times. Now, I will admit, when I generally get the first or second communication from my part, that's when the emotional aspect hits, and I'm crying or frustrated or nervous or whatever, or confused. So I'm crying as I'm dictating it. Generally what happens, I'll lay down to go to sleep and I'll have a memory, and it's so shocking that I go, oh my God, you poor little thing, to my part. And then we'll both burst out crying. And so I'll release that. And when the bulk of it's released, and that could go on for an hour, but I grab my phone and I dictate it. And by the time I go the second run, the tears are gone and the part is giving me more details. And again, it goes through a process. So I'm going through it 3 or 4 times. But each time you'll get more details. But yeah, the first time through, you will feel it. And that's hard. It's difficult. Your conscious adult present personality, which I hope you can be in, recognize that part and comfort them and cry with them and hold them in your mind's eye. Or, when I'm laying in bed, I have a pillow there, and I'll imagine that little 3-year-old, 3-week-old, and I'm hugging them and I'm letting them just cry or have it. That's what TED's about, is having a tantrum and hitting their perpetrator back when they couldn't. That's what TED's about, is letting those little ones or big ones fight back or cry in your arms and be comforted. They need that. They need to know that you're there, but number one, you're listening. So turn off the tube, turn off the radio. Work on being comfortable in silence. And if you got parts, you're not going to have silence in your head, but at least you're listening to you. You're listening to yourself. You're listening to all the different aspects and different points of view. And if you're having arguments in your head, it's because your parts are not getting along. And if parts aren't talking to you, it's because they don't trust you, because you're not listening. First of all, they want to know you're listening. So eliminate the crap that fills up your headspace. Okay, so I think I'll get off of that. And I'll do a journal read. See, I began writing, but after I have 3 of these books filled up, and that's when the memories came slower. But the more I wrote it out and the more I listened and acknowledged and just wrote it down, whether I thought it was gibberish or not, I wrote it down, they felt, okay, she's listening. Then they came hard and heavy, and that's when it was at night, and to write while you're emotionally upset, but it's easier to dictate it. And I'm not saying that I'm any fan of technology whatsoever, and I know that we are monitored and people keep track of us. We all know that. But you know what? I don't care if they know that I know and I'm remembering. I hope you're in the safe place and you're protected so that you can have that level of fuck 'em attitude, F 'em attitude. But I don't like having my experience in digital form, but that's the reality of where I'm at. I can't keep up with it otherwise right now. It's so fast and so furious. And what I'm reading to you from my handwritten journals was from last October. This entry here is November. So things will speed up, and put your seatbelt on because it's a ride, but it's necessary to get through it. It's necessary if you don't want this to go on for 20 years. No, I'm sure for the rest of my life I'll have... I realized the difference last night. Yeah, I call it having memories, but everybody has memories. It's the recall of the trauma. Once you have the recall of the trauma and you work through the emotional part, journal it out, all that, then it's a memory. You can access it when you need to. It's not forgotten, ever. But your parts were listened to, was recorded, it was analyzed, sorted, etc. And it's a memory now. But the recall of the trauma is the first part. So clear your mind. Get rid of the junk. So anyway, done with that. Turn off the TV, turn off the radio. In the evening, if you just need something to just, whatever, like me, I'll put on YouTube, and I taught myself how to organically garden. I taught myself how to, ride my bike down mountainsides, how you should stand and sit and whatever. And granted, don't go do it anymore so much, but I know how to do it now because of YouTube. My husband watches camping videos because they're peaceful. He's a veteran, so he with PTSD, so he doesn't get triggered watching that. He watches Jeeps who video themselves taking drives through mountainsides or deserts or whatever, off-roading, camping. Try to find peaceful, calm things to watch if you enjoy. I want to say this. I used to watch Home and Garden Channel, and all it made me want to do is fix my house. It made me dissatisfied with my house. And that's the whole thing with commercials. They're going to make you dissatisfied with what you have. And you know what? You don't have to upgrade your furniture every 5 years or 10 years. You don't have to. Yeah, it's nice to get new stuff. But watching those shows are going to make you dissatisfied with what you have. So I watch homesteaders. I watch gardening. I watch educational things. If something from, like right now, I'm consumed with watching SRA and the Imagination podcast. Shout out, Emma. You're the bomb. So go that route. Try to educate yourself rather than entertain yourself. Yeah, entertainment's nice, but every day, 4, 6, 12 hours a day, really? I know I was there, and you gotta dial it back. Ultimately, turn it off. So, done. Let me get off that again. Get to my journal.
Now, that kind of thing doesn't bother me in the least. Because today, you see, you're filled with all these supposed science shows and science quips and all the rest of it, until you're fed up. I get fed up hearing all the rubbish. All the could be's in outer space, or they might have seen another planet, or blah, blah, blah. It really doesn't affect me at all. It really, really doesn't. I don't fall for it all or start chatting about it. Oh, do you know they're talking about there could be another... It really doesn't make a darn bit of difference to my life. Does it make any difference to your life? Does it? Huh? I mean, are you supposed to be an expert in everything? No. And most of these characters who work for the science and all the rest of it too are living on grants. They'll say anything to get their names in the paper and get another grant going. For anything, anything at all. Because that's to say, they don't produce anything except maybes and possibilities and yada, yada, yada. It doesn't make any difference to me. Or one day we'll go off into space and yada, 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 in another 100 generations or something. It doesn't affect me whatsoever. So why waste time filling your head up with all this useless data? Huh? Do you realize you've got one life to live, eh? One life. And as soon as you're born, you've got all these forces out there, including your parents, who try to download their indoctrinations onto you, you see? And then school and all the rest of it, then your TV, and then every radio thing that you put on, an AM radio or FM across the country, there's all these advertisers buying away, wanting to take charge of your brain, you see? Do you realize it's a fight to think for yourself? Do you realize that everything is stacked against you thinking for yourself on anything? Anything. They'll want to fill you full of data. And how much data, useless data, can your brain hold? I think that's more of a reason for folk cracking up. It's just rubbish. Don't let it all in. And things that don't matter, don't even get heated about it. Just ignore it. It reminds me of Sherlock Holmes. You find that the stories are always supposedly written by Sherlock Holmes' sidekick, Dr. Watson. And Watson mentions, I think, the first book and chapter, when he met Sherlock Holmes, how ignorant Holmes was on what was called general knowledge, general topics and so on that you got at school and universities. He didn't know the top authors of the day. He didn't know much about their philosophies and so on. And or had no interest in politics, who the politicians were or anything else. Because basically, Holmes specialized in certain areas. And when he asked Holmes about it, Holmes said, well, it's just most people's minds or brains, basically, are empty at birth. And they cram them full of all the irrelevant knowledge there is, until everything's mixed up and crowded out and covered over with all irrelevant facts, basically. He says it's like an attic, he said. All the excess stuff in his brain, he didn't need. He just put into this attic and kept only the pertinent things in his actual main room, his brain, you see. But most folk were different through their indoctrinations, etc. And that's how it really is, isn't it? And that's supposedly is what made this fictitious detective such a fantastic sleuth. He could figure anything out by deduction of logic. You see, his mind wasn't crowded with all the daily nonsense of trivia and media and advertisers demanding chunks of your brain. And how right Conan Doyle was, the author, when you think about it today, because they tell us, in fact, with glee almost, that on the internet and various things that people are training themselves to do, it rewires the brain. They're ecstatic about it. So what should it normally be, you see, compared to what is it when you finish with it all your indoctrinations and your rewiring? What are you then? Do you believe anything for yourself? Can you deduce anything for yourself? Or are you pretty well helpless and you need to be informed what to think, believe, or do? You've got to think of these powers, remember. And remember, too, that Aldous Huxley talked about similar things as well, that the techniques way back in his day that he'd observed himself, that were being tested and played with on people, techniques of managing the mind. He was talking about the times when they could actually use psychiatric patients and stick wires in their brains and things like that. They actually did that. I don't think they stopped with Delgado's bull. No, they used humans as well. And the Russians were doing the same thing in the Soviet Union. Incredible, very, very old footage of that too, if you ever come across it. But yeah, basically, literally in the deepest sense, rewiring the brain. But he said that the sciences, which are in the control of a few powerful men, he said, could literally dominate nations and the world. And he wasn't kidding, you see. He didn't speculate about it either. He knew the big foundations that were working towards this on behalf of the masters, and he knew some of the masters, the real masters, the inner circles as they call them, because he belonged to that class that helped them in previous generations get to that position or hold on to power. So he knew that, and his family too were up there in the scientific helping class. They saw themselves as indispensable to the ruling elite, the dominant minority. And he talked about that, the dominant minority, and how they'd always be around. They had always been around and always would be around. But they wouldn't do all that, the work that you'll see presented to you. They don't come forward as politicians and things like that, you see. And his brother was more open about it. He talked at some global meetings. He worked at the United Nations. And he talked about it too, his brother, Julian Huxley, about all their ambitious plans. And it literally was to rework and reorder all of society for different purposes, and definitely not for a purpose of your own